Welcome to the CodePrep Podcast, the podcast that shows you how to get into tech. Every month, we do 2 bonus episodes. Last month, our bonus episodes were on recommendations on learning. We also did our second bonus episode on surviving a coding boot camp. This month, we're doing a great 2-part episode to cover issues that most people don't like to talk about, and that is mental health issues in the workplace, especially in the tech industry. So today, we're going to be covering depression, anxiety, and PTSD. We'll be talking about what it is, what causes it, and how to address it. And then the next bonus episode this month, we're going to be talking about Asperger's spectrum, or sometimes referred to as autism, and alcoholism. So let's get started. So Valerie, do you want to start us off on why we're interested in talking about mental health issues in tech?
Yes, there are a couple of reasons that this was a very exciting prospect for me. One, we've been friends a while now, and you and I had a discussion where, I was talking about some things that I live with, and you basically said, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't live with it. So I don't know how to address that. And I thought, well, interesting. If we're in a workplace together and my PTSD causes me to be a little quirky, you might not know that that's why I'm quirky and how to be a good teammate through it. That sort of resonated with me. Then we had this awesome guest, Sara Vieira. I believe her episode is up live. And she discussed writing a Medium article about dealing with depression, especially road fatigue from going to so many conferences. And the response she got from people who read it was, overwhelmingly, thank you for discussing this. No one discusses it. Well, here's the thing. We all have health issues that we deal with. And, you and I both wear glasses and contacts. We don't try to hide that from people. If I were diabetic on insulin and eating a special diet, I wouldn't be ashamed or afraid to tell my coworkers, hey, don't bring me a birthday cake. I can't eat, please. It's not a thing. We haven't stigmatized it the way that some mental health issues have been stigmatized. And then 3, I have noticed that the more I am open and honest with people, be they coworkers, friends, family, strangers, with what I live with, the more emboldened they feel to, one, recognize in themselves things that they need to address, but then also people tend to be more comfortable when those around them talk about it because it's not the first time they've heard it. So it's special to my heart. When I think about our listeners, statistically speaking, every one of our listeners either deals with one of these things in the workplace or has a coworker who does. Why aren't we talking about it? Let's do that. We can help you get a job in tech. This is a part of keeping your job, being a good teammate, and helping your company thrive and helping your career thrive. So let's dig in.
All right, let's get started. So the first thing we want to talk about is depression. According to some statistics, depression is one of the most common mental illnesses in the United States. It affects more than 16 million men and women. And that turns out to be almost 7% of the adult population. According to the World Health Organization, it's the leading cause of disability worldwide. It affects people individually, as a community. It costs employers billions and billions of dollars every year. When you look at tech, sometimes the tech industry is known for their long work hours and they try to, have high salaries. Tech workers are very susceptible to this disorder. And you study, and we'll show a link to it below in the show notes, is that over 1/3 of the professionals in tech admit that they've had issues with depression. So now that we kind of know what it is, what are some signs and symptoms that you have depression or that a coworker might have depression?
Yeah, so depression, hello depression, my old friend. Depression is many things. Something it's not is having a bad day is not depression. Everyone has bad days. Everyone has crappy things happen. I encourage people I love to do a very special ritual. I call it wallowing. And wallowing involves, if you're not a depressed person, but you've had something really bad happen, maybe you got downsized. You've now lost your job. You got to start over. Maybe you didn't get a promotion you wanted. Something bad happened. Take a day, watch sad movies designed to trigger that tear response. If you are comfortable drinking alcohol, have a couple, relax, let the tears freely flow, eat comfort food, take a day, wallow, let it out of your system, then hit the ground running and move on. That's not depression. That is being a human and living with the fact that bad things happen. Depression looks like a loss of interest in things that used to bring you joy. A sustained, no longer feeling joy in general, feeling disconnected from those around you, being in a room full of people and feeling like you're all alone. It is an overwhelming sensation in some ways, but also you don't feel things like you used to. It is the weirdest juxtaposition between feeling everything and feeling nothing. And, in extreme cases, depression leads to suicide, which people don't like to discuss. But as it turns out, it's a thing. And my trans sisters out there, I see you. You have higher rates of depression and suicide. Please. As we're going through these episodes, if you recognize behaviors and thoughts and patterns in yourself, don't play armchair psychologist. Reach out to a medical professional. Let them know what's going on. Get an appropriate diagnosis. Get appropriate medication, just like if you were diabetic and needed insulin. No shame, ladies. Depression in the workplace looks like you show up to work day after day because you have to. I mean, if you don't show up to work every day, someone's going to notice. And I got to tell you, losing your job will make you more depressed. But it looks like showing up and no one knows that you haven't had a shower in days, because when you get home, after making yourself smile for your coworkers all day, you have no energy left. You're done. You can't. Your house is a wreck, but no one at work needs to know that. Your cubicle's clean. And, you're either not eating because you just don't remember to eat. You're too busy feeling nothing to feel hunger. Or maybe you're depressed and you can't stop eating because it's the only thing that's bringing you that serotonin release and bringing a moment's joy. It looks like different things to different people. But how can we be good teammates if we recognize a coworker suddenly, they used to be putting on makeup and now they're just not ever. They used to have this sort of chipperness, and over time they're really, how are you today? I'm good. How are you? Oh, I'm great. Yeah. Maybe they're not speaking in meetings anymore. What can we do? Avoid the instinct to try to take them by the hand and make them better. Chances are they're already doing it. Give them space. Like, they don't want you to know that they're not showering, that they're not eating, that they're not cleaning their house, that they're spending every minute just trying to keep head above water in most cases. So keep an eye out for places at work you can be of help. Are they overloaded with tasks? Are there some tasks you can take from them and lighten their load a little? These sorts of conversations, they start to blur the line between friend and coworker, but they're important because at the end of the day, you're on the same team working for the same company. You helping them lessen their workload so they can get through a rough time is you being a good employee and also a good human, a good ally to that person. Have you, in your experience, have you ever noticed anyone around you at work that you just thought needed extra help?
You always see somebody that comes in that they're usually the quiet ones. They don't try to interact with others. They, won't go out to lunch when you go out in a group. They just, want to be by themselves. And if you see something like that, it can, you don't want to go and just, put fuel on the fire. We're just saying, oh, well, they're just being, weird or unsociable. And then you just dump onto the problems that they're currently having. Sometimes it just taking a minute or two and just asking them, like, for example, you were talking about somebody smells because they haven't taken a shower in a few days. And just instead of attacking them and saying something about their hygiene or something like that, say, hey, is there something going on? Is there something wrong? Is there something that you need help with? And then they might open up. If you just start off by attacking them, of course they're not going to respond. They're not going to react. And if you start asking as if you show that you care, then that allows them to be a little bit more open and then, say the issues that they're having. And it can be something that's very simple, like, I'm, a sick parent that, all of a sudden had to move in at home, and, I've got a kid, and I'm up all night with the kid, I'm all day working, with a sick parent, and it's just too much for them to be overwhelmed for it. And just saying, okay, well, tomorrow work from home, and giving them that relief, and then being able to let them be able to focus on what's their issue are, is just something little like that. You can go out and address, the symptoms, and help somebody else that's having that type of problem.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a team situation. I mean, if you're noticing, most professional depressed people, you'll never see the worst of it. We're really good at hiding it. Most of all, just reminding them that they're seen can make a huge difference, not in their illness, not in their long term, but in the day to day, which really, for a depressed person, you're just trying to get through day to day. You're not thinking about your mental health a week from now. You're thinking about surviving, being in front of other humans, trying to hide how you really feel on the inside. A lot of times, depressed people, we're driving to work with intrusive thoughts about suicide that we don't particularly enjoy having. They're just there. And we've already had, mental gymnastics going on all morning before you ever see us. That first cup of coffee is hours into our struggle, Yeah. So sometimes just letting them know without even mentioning that you see the struggle, that you see them, like, hey, this thing that you did on this project was really cool. Do you think we could have lunch and discuss how you used Angular in that way, or whatever it was, just let them know that they're part of the team. There is a place in this world they're wanted, and it's work. Just that makes it easier for someone dealing with depression to come into the office and be a part of the team. If you feel like you have gone from a little sad to not feeling joy, not enjoying activities you used to enjoy, these sorts of personality changes, chances are your office has a resource line. If you're afraid to use a resource line sponsored by your office, we're going to share all sorts of links in the show notes to get you some help. If you work at a company that does not offer awesome health insurance, we got you. We're going to help you find some state, county resources. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. And if you're not dealing with depression and you want to be a good teammate, look for those teammates who seem to be struggling. Tell them when they do a good job and let them know that you like having them on the team.
Exactly. Because when you look at, depression, or any of the mental health issues that we're going to be talking about in this bonus episode and in the next one, a lot of people are in denial that, if they have an issue, they deny it. They, don't want to talk about it because they assume that there's a stigma attached with it. Maybe like you said, that their, health insurance at their company might be inadequate, and so they don't have the resources to address that. But here's the thing. You need to talk about it. You need to address it because it only gets worse if you don't. And just by reaching out to somebody and just talking to somebody can make great improvements in your condition, in your health, and how you're able to contribute, to the company and make you feel better about yourself. So that's the main thing that we wanted to do in this episode is to talk about these health issues and, what they are and some of the signs and symptoms and, what can go on about that. So Valerie, have you ever had firsthand experience with depression? And if so, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So depression, I thought that I dealt with depression my whole life. And I learned in 2017, right before I went into my boot camp, that actually what I have is called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And depression is just a symptom, one of many that I had successfully ignored for 34 years. Yeah, and I'm so stubborn. And mind you, I want my listeners to really take a minute to think about how ridiculous I am. I have a psych degree. And I think I might be the only person in the world with a psych degree who never tried to self-diagnose. I watched my classmates, especially like in abnormal psych. When we're talking about, these outlier mental health conditions that, 2% of the population deals with, and half of the class is saying, I have that, I do that. No, you don't. Stop it. Write your paper and move on. I think I'm the only one who didn't self-diagnose, and I should have. I just, for 34 years, I called myself quirky and depressed, and I knew that I had weird things, and it took, I had a little bit of a breakdown right before I started my coding boot camp. I went to a facility, and I thought I was going for one thing, and they said, well, let's talk to you about your history. And they asked me a bunch of questions. And they said, well, you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I said, no, I don't. No, I'm just weird. And they said, no, honey, did you listen to yourself the last hour? And it took being in a group therapy session and a woman saying, well, how do you feel when you think about your trauma? Like, what's your bodily reaction? And I said, which trauma? Aha, ha, 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 ha. That's a clue. So the journey of recognizing PTSD has only been a few years for me, but it's been an interesting ride because more people in this country live with it than you would think. Jen, just off the street, if I say PTSD, what type of person comes to mind immediately when someone says PTSD?
A soldier that's been in combat.
A male soldier at that, yeah?
Yeah, a male soldier in combat.
Oh, yeah. Rates of PTSD in the military are ridiculous because being in war, even if you never see the kind of ugly violence that we think of with PTSD, just being afraid for your life every day, that changes your brain structure. Like, it changes you chemically. It alters you in a physical way that requires treatment. Well, guess what? 70% of adults in this country, and again, we're going to share a bunch of show notes, but about 70% of adults in this country have been through a traumatic event. But not all of them are going to have PTSD. I believe you had a sort of group traumatic event at one of your places of business at one point, yeah?
That is true. And it's quite interesting because when you brought up the issue of let's talk about mental health issues, and I was like, dang, I have absolutely nothing to contribute because I feel like I've had a pretty normal life. I've never been to therapy. I've never felt like I've had issues of, depressions or anything else like that. And I was like, I don't have anything to talk about. And as you were talking about stuff and addressing it, I said, oh, let me tell you about what happened to us one day at work. And it turned out to be, it's a complete, a great case example of what PTSD is like. And that we're sitting at work. We have a very small team. We have like 6 people and we have 1 project manager. And one day we were at work. Our project manager happens to be the fittest person, healthiest eating person on the team, unexpectedly had a brain aneurysm, where the blood vessel popped and, blood flows into his brain. And, of course, he goes limp as a result of this. And he's sitting at his desk and he's typing away and he's doing all this. And he has a brain aneurysm. And when that happens, his body goes limp. So he basically falls down out of his chair. And as he falls down, here's this 188-pound man. And his chair, which is, of course, is on wheels, just ricochets behind him and just hits the back wall and bounces off of it. It sounded like a gun, because it's like 180 pounds just pushing this mobile chair into the wall. I mean, it hit the wall, bounced up, two cubes down, ended up, and everything else like that. And we were like, oh my God. And then we realized that here he is lying on the floor and that he's hurt and he's had a serious injury. And look, he survived it, very luckily. And being healthy had to do with it. But that was over a year and almost a year and a half ago this happened. And then a year later, he's still out. He's still recovering from his brain aneurysm. And another team, not a member of our team, but, two groups down, a guy was working on something that was like a robot thing that he was working on. And as he was working on it, something happened and it dropped onto the ground and just crashed. And my heart just sunk. And I was thinking, oh my God, somebody almost just died. I'm afraid to sit up and poke my head up over the cube to see what was going on. And it was like all 6 members of our team that we sit right next to each other immediately got quiet. Every single one of us had the exact same reaction. We were like, not again. This is not happening. And it was just a small sound like that triggered that response in us. Luckily the gentleman didn't die, but he's still been out for over a year now recovering from it. But it was just one small thing like that realized, yeah, I've had firsthand experience with that. All of us did.
Oh yeah, about 70% of adults have been through one of the sort of primary traumatic experiences that tends to lead to PTSD. Now, only about 20% of the population is going to have PTSD, come of that. But, would it surprise you to know that most people in this country living with PTSD are not male soldiers? They're women, non-military. Wow. Because one of the fastest ways to PTSD is sexual assault and domestic violence. And guess what? That's what women live with in this country. When you start digging into the numbers of the women that deal with this, and then start thinking about the women and doing some math, we're everywhere. It leads to problems. But it's not just sexual assault and rape that lead to PTSD. Car accidents, unexpected, traumatic, scary, life flashing before your eyes, just car accidents can lead to it. The sudden illness of a child or loved one, sudden death, unexpected death is a big one. I mean, I have to tell you, as a younger person going through watching my father die of a very expected, known illness. We knew he had terminal cancer. We had time to prepare. Was it devastating? Sure. Was it depressing? Absolutely. Was it a rough time? Yes. But it was expected and not out of the blue. So much more difficult to deal with the dozen or so people in my life that are just gone one day. And so many of us have lived through that, where you take for granted someone's going to be there and then they're gone. And you didn't see it coming and you don't know how to grieve. And you still have to go to work every day through this, you still have to function as part of your dev team. Everyone in your office has either been in a car accident, lost a person, been assaulted, something. Well, not everyone's going to have PTSD, but those who do are going to show signs. So I want to talk about some of those. I have been really vocal at work about the PTSD for a couple of reasons. One, I refused to live my life ashamed because I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm great. And honestly, this is why I love Wade Wilson, the comic book character Deadpool. This is why I love him. I'm about to get nerdy on you. Sorry. I'm getting nerdy for a minute. He is a superhero. He can do things other people can't do. And his superpower has left him scarred and mangled. But he covers it with a beautiful suit. And then he does these cool things. That's how I feel. My history has scarred me and mangled me on the inside, but it enables me to help people in a way I couldn't otherwise, and I cover it with this beautiful veneer. So I feel like Deadpool with my superpower of seeing other people's struggles and trying to help them. Do you have coworkers over the course of your life? I mean, this is not just in tech, but in general, that don't do well with loud noises.
You have people that don't do well with loud noises. I've had people that don't do well with even, light. They're like, we just recently moved our department from one floor to another floor to a new section of our company. And sorry, I forgot to turn the phone off. Sorry about that.
No judgment here. It's a judgment-free zone.
I hope it's not somebody that's found my cat, because she's out. But what they're worried about the lights, and we just moved into this new area, and you have these, like, I don't know, 15-foot ceilings. Like a normal ladder won't reach the ceiling because it's so way up there, and the light bulbs are screwed in directly into the ceiling. And they were like, let's figure out, can I put this ladder on top of the desk and you hold it, and I'll climb up there so I can unscrew the light bulb. And you're like, okay, but I kind of have bad eyesight. I kind of need the light. Leave the light bulb in.
And this is why open offices are the worst idea ever. Give me office walls. Put the introverts who like dark caves in an office together. Remove the light bulb. The light bulb over my desk is gone, Jen. That's funny you mentioned that. That got unscrewed.
I'd screw it in if I come visit you.
So again, when we think about PTSD, we think about things like, I had a fight or flight is a big thing with people with PTSD. When you scare them or startle them and take them by surprise, some of us react by recoiling, by cowering, trying to get away. And some of us react by bowing up and we're ready to fight. And I have almost accidentally punched a few people who snuck up on me. I didn't mean to, sorry. But what we don't often talk about with PTSD, one, depression and anxiety are part and parcel with PTSD. They're just like triplets, the really irritating triplets that plague us. Another thing that we don't think about is attention deficit disorder. As it turns out, people with PTSD have really high rates of not being able to focus. Guess what developers need to be able to do all day?
Yes, absolutely.
So, if you're in a management position and you've got an employee saying, I just can't focus, also I need dark and I don't like being around people and everything scares me, well, guess what? Failure to help that employee has just transitioned from a lack of good management to actively discriminating against someone with a disability. It behooves those in a position of authority to recognize these signs and make accommodations. If I were in a wheelchair, I would not shy away from asking for the accommodations I need. Mm-hmm. Why would I shy away from saying, I need to be in the back of the room where people don't sneak up on me, and I need that light bulb removed, sorry, Jen, and I need help focusing. I need some noise canceling headphones. I need something. It's no different, guys. If you're recognizing these things in yourself, go get a diagnosis, potentially some help with serotonin and dopamine, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need at work.
Exactly. The main reason that we wanted to do this bonus episode and then the next one that we're going to be doing for this month is we want to try to start the conversation. This is something that you, all of our listeners might have firsthand experience with mental health issues. You might have a coworker that has experiences with that issue. And if that's the case, we want to start the conversation, start talking about it. You're not alone. If you reach out, chances are somebody that you're going to talk to has had the exact, they may have it now, they might have had it in the past, that they can understand and they can sympathize and empathize with your problems and be able to help you out on that. The worst thing you can do is to do nothing. So what we want to do is encourage people to just start the conversation, start reaching out to others, and then see if we can, start talking about this issue and help.
I talk about the Tyrion Lannister approach to the world a lot in the context of motherhood. How when I was doing my job hunt and I felt like people would judge that period of time that I was a stay-at-home mom, I tried to wear it like armor. Tyrion Lannister is a character from Game of Thrones, and he was talking to Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, and Jon Snow was offended that Tyrion called him a bastard. And Tyrion said, "Never forget what you are, bastard, for the world will not. Wear it like armor. It can never be used to hurt you." And this really resonated with me. And I mentioned that a lot in the context of my time as a stay-at-home mom, but I think of the PTSD in the same way. I don't just think about, okay, I have this issue from a lifetime of these sorts of traumatic events. How do I manage it? I think, what has it changed inside of me that makes me uniquely qualified to do a good job? Well, people with PTSD tend to be hypervigilant and always on guard and very aware of their surroundings. We tend to be meticulous and we want everything just so. Guess what? That translates really well. If you can focus your energy because you're in a safe environment where no one's sneaking up behind you, for example, and focus that hypervigilance on your work, that's great. You're going to do a good job. Whatever symptoms you have from depression, anxiety, PTSD, find a way if you can to make good of them, because they don't make you less than. They don't make you a bad employee. They make you you, and you got hired. Use them. Figure out a way. And if that means you send me a message and we inbox back and forth until we find a way, okay. If that means you go to some group counseling sessions and talk to other people dealing with the same things, okay. Figure out what makes you Deadpool, what makes you a superhero, and which one of your quirky symptoms you can use to your advantage. Because guess what? Everyone in this world has dealt with something. We might as well get something good out of it.
Exactly.
Do you have any questions about being a good ally at work?
I think the best question is, what can we do to help out our coworkers that are experiencing problems, or if we're experiencing problems, what's the best thing that we can do to help each other out?
I think just being aware, in a basic way, when you're at a lunch table with your coworkers, right? I don't find most of the women in my life have to deal with this as much as some of the men in my life, because we have been conditioned to do it for longer, but we watch our mouths at work, right? We're very conscious of the kinds of jokes we make, and no one wants to be seen as accidentally sexist, racist, ableist, what have you. Start adding in mental health concerns to your list of these jokes aren't funny. I mean, we wouldn't make a joke about rape. Why would we make a joke about PTSD? Why would we make a joke about a physical ailment that someone at the table, statistically speaking, probably dealing with? Be conscious of your words. Be conscious of, if there's a character on the TV show you're discussing and they deal with depression, take a minute to think about how you discuss that character in front of your coworkers. Guess what? Part of why people are so quiet, I think, is a number of times they've been in a public setting where these things are openly mocked and they're the butt of jokes. And so they just assume they can't get their needs met at work. They can't talk about it. They can't be themselves. Well, let's challenge that notion.
Exactly. So hopefully this bonus episode will help you to start talking about mental health issues. If you have experienced these problems, start talking about them. If you've got coworkers that are having, reach out to them and start talking to them. That's the goal of what we want to accomplish with this bonus episode. So, Valerie, you want to wrap us up?
Yes. Long story short, take a minute, reflect on your needs and your life and how you're doing with your overall health, and include mental health in it. If you need help, go to our resources. If not, look for other resources. If you're great, good for you. Awesome. Keep an eye out. Be a good teammate. Watch your words. And in general, be a good human. We love you. We're thankful for you. We're so glad we get to do this and share this with you. And we'll talk to you next time.